Hi everyone, it's Michelle here. Today I'm going to be showing you how I used this branching out stamp set from the Alleyway Stamps, and I'm going to be turning some of these stamps into silhouettes, which is really easy to do, but it's just a new way to use your stamps to get a different look out of them. So I have a 4¼ by 5½ top folding card base here. I'm using 110-pound white cardstock. So I am just going to be taping this down to some scrap paper with some painter's tape, because after I'm going to stamp and have these silhouette shapes, I'm going to be inking some distress ink over it just to create a really colorful effect. So I'm just taping it down at the top fold just to make sure nothing goes over to the back of the card. So I pulled out this stamp that has two trees, and usually when I use this set, I stamp it going horizontally across the card so that the little creatures can be like hanging off of it, but this time I'm going to be doing it vertically. And there are two little silhouette bird shapes, which are perfect because they're already silhouettes for this stamp set. And I'm going to be stamping those onto the little branches. And I like that you can use this stamp both ways, so it makes it extra versatile. And I'm stamping this in My Favorite Things hybrid ink because I'm going to be filling it in later with Copics, which you'll see. So as I mentioned, there are these two birds that are already all filled in, so these are really easy to stamp in and they'll just already be all blacked out. But if you have a different stamp that has the birds that are just like an outline, it would be pretty easy to just color those in as well. So after I have both of these stamped up, you don't really need a perfect impression because you're going to be coloring everything in. So I pulled out this black Copic marker and I'm just going over what I've already stamped to color in those spaces. I started with the black one, but then I moved to a slightly smaller one. I think this one is like N7, and I also tried N2, but that one was a little too light. So I mostly stuck with N7. I like that it's a dark gray color, so it looks like a silhouette, but since it's not completely black, you can still see traces of what you stamped, like those little lines on the tree. And then I just went back to the completely black marker, and then I added some shading with that. So even when you're doing a silhouette where it's usually you just think it's completely black, you can still do shading with that just to add a little bit more depth and interest. And after that's colored in, I brought out my little container of mini distress ink cubes, and I'm going to be inking up a sky background. So I usually stick to the same colors for skies because I think it's really pretty to do a light blue, a dark blue, and then mix it in with purple because then it looks a little more colorful rather than just doing blues. So the first blue I'm doing is Salty Ocean, which is a brighter blue. Then I'm moving on to Chipped Sapphire, which is a little darker, and I'm just blending those together with my ink blending tool. And I'm going really lightly on this so that you don't get any streaks when you're blending this together. And I also kind of like move off from the side because this is going to be covered up later. So you'll see I'm just kind of inking up the area on the left side of the card. And this is because I already had an idea of having a circle shape going over and covering up the right side, which you'll see in a little bit. But if you want, you can also ink up the entire card front just to have the whole thing be colorful. So I pulled off that tape so that I can work on this card front now. And now I have this patterned paper pad by Studio Calico. And this is a very basic pad that has lots of browns and earthy tones, which I thought would be nice with this kind of naturey background. So I pulled out two sheets that I thought would work really well, one with horizontal dash stripes and then one with flowers. And in the end, I went with the flowers one just because I thought it added a little bit more pattern since I don't have too much going on in the background. So I am going to be cutting a circle out of this, but kind of out of the side of it. So I'm using my Martha Stewart circle cutter tool. This is a rotary cutter, but if you have a circle die, you can use that as well. I just use this because I don't have a manual die cutter, so it's a little easier than pulling out my Silhouette machine. But you can use any kind of circle cutter you want, or you can even do this by hand, just by tracing a circle and then cutting it out. And then after I have that circle cut, I have to trim this piece down a little bit since this is a 6x6 paper. So I'm just placing it over my card front where it looks good, and then I'm going to go and turn over to the back side so I can mark off the perfect placement and where to trim it off. So I'm just going to do that quickly with my paper trimmer. And now you can see how that fits perfectly to my card front, and the circle will mask off all of the edges that I didn't ink while just concentrating on my scene with the silhouette birds and the branches. I needed a little strip of cardstock for my sentiment since there wasn't really a place where I wanted to put it, and also I wanted to create a sympathy card, but I didn't have any sympathy sentiments in the stamp set or on hand. So I'm just gonna write my own today, which is something a little different. So I took a strip of gray cardstock. I couldn't find any black cardstock, so I just took a gray one that was a little too light, and then I colored it in with my Copic markers. And these are the same ones I used for the silhouette, so it matches a little bit better. And I'm going to be writing Deepest Sympathy, and I'm just going to do this in some freehand script. So you can just go really slowly if you don't like your handwriting or just practice a few times. I'm doing this in pencil first, of course, so that if I mess up, I can just change that really easily. But it was pretty easy to do. I just did a really simple cursive, nothing fancy. And I took a white gel pen. This is a Jelly Roll white gel pen. Usually I use a Uniball pen, but this one is a little bit thinner, and since my sentiment was a little bit long and needed to be smaller, I use this one since it has a finer tip. So I'm just going slowly over what I've written. At first I thought I was going to go for like a calligraphy look, but I didn't really have enough space for that because the letters would end up being too thick if I did that. So this is just a really simple script that I really believe anyone can do. So if you don't have a sentiment, you can always write your own and it'll look just fine. So I am adding some little stars and dots around the trees and onto my black strip of cardstock just to add something a little more to tie in that white from the sentiment. And then I'm just trimming off this little piece so that it's a little tighter around my handwriting. And now you can see how it'll kind of hang off of the tree and overlap over this piece of pattern paper with the white mask. So now I'm just going to assemble everything because I pretty much have all the pieces together. So I'm taping everything flat with my tape runner. I'm going to go back and erase the pencil lines from what I hand wrote and also add a few more little dots with my white gel pen. And after that, my card is complete. So here are some close-up photos. Turning your stamps into silhouettes is really easy, and it's a great way to get a sort of different look from your stamps if you just want to kind of think of new ideas to use them. And I hope this has also inspired you to maybe try handwriting your sentiments if you don't have things that match your cards perfectly. It's also super easy to do, and it gives it a more handmade touch, which I think is always great, especially for a personal card like this. Thank you so much for watching my video. If you enjoyed this and would like to see more crafting tutorials, you can click through to the videos on screen here, or you can subscribe to either of the channels listed at the top. Thank you again so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.